Today we're going to talk about the electrical system for your office building, restaurant, brewery, whatever project you have, it should all be the same. So today we're going to go over electrical systems and things to look out for. So here we are today, we're at this new project here in Cedar Park, Texas. This is currently vacant. Used to be an office building, and it will be an office building again soon. So I want to check out a few things while we're here to see what kind of electrical system we're working with, see what kind of outlets we have, to see how much room we have on the panel, and just kind of go briefly over what to look out for if you're looking at renting a space or you're looking at getting a new space. What types of things are you looking for? So we're going to walk outside real quick. When we talk about electrical, we're going to talk about how things work as it comes to the building. So every municipality, city will have their main service come into the building. Typically that's on the outside. It'll connect to a main panel, which that main panel will then connect to a sub panel and various other things. So let's go outside and see if we can find the main panel. All right, so here's the main panel. You can see where it comes in from the city's main line. Comes down this conduit into this panel here. Just got a box that says General Electric on it. So if you look in, you can see on this panel that it says main on it. So you got your main shut off here, and then each one, thankfully this one's actually pretty good, it's labeled. Not a lot, you don't always get these labels, but you'll see that these are breakers for each individual piece that's tied into this. So we got furnace, we got a GFCI at the kitchen, GFCI ground fault interrupt, which means if it gets wet it won't trigger. Your air conditioning, then you got a water heater, your furnace, refrigerator. So all these are the main panels, but then you hear here at the bottom, sub panel A. So what this means is this is the breaker for a sub panel, which is somewhere in the building. So we gotta go find that. You can see there's still some slots open, so there's still some room inside there. I'm not sure what wattage or what amperage this is set for, but it looks like there's still some slots available. Shouldn't be a big deal though. We don't plan on adding too much into this, so we don't really need the room. But if you were gonna be adding, you know, some heavy equipment, or if you're adding, you know, say you're doing a kitchen, something like that, you want to look to see how much spare room there is on those panels, because you don't want to run out of space and have to bring in a new service. All right, so here we are, we're in the space now. We got to find this sub panel. Typically the sub panel is not going to be in an office. It'll be in a closet somewhere or kind of tucked away somewhere else. So we got a closet here. This might be the spot. Nope. We have, this is what's called the, let's see if I can get it here, the telephone backer board. So this is back when people had telephones that weren't digital. You would come in to this service through the provider, and then these are the punch down panels, and each one of these lines gets punched into it, gets served to a specific office. We don't use those anymore now that we're on voice over IP. Looks like we got some timers here. This one says for sign and security soffit lights. So that's pretty good. These guys were good about labeling what everything's for. There's a closet over here. See if we can find it in here. Nope, it's just a closet. Kitchen, probably in here. Most likely behind a door. There it is, perfect. All right, so here's our sub panel, very clearly marked sub panel A. This is great. And in the sub panel, they've actually marked out what everything is. So that's pretty good. And you see there's quite a bit of space left. So not too bad. Okay, so that's good. That tells us that we know that there's enough room in there. If we need to add any convenience outlets, we're good. So now we looked at the panels. Let's look at what kind of outlets we're dealing with, and we'll go over each type as we find them. So right away, find a floor outlet. These are just your regular outlets, but they're put in the floor. This is a concrete floor, so most likely there's some kind of conduit inside or underneath the slab running to the panel. And then on the walls you have just what are called your standard duplexes. Duplex meaning there's two of them. If there were four, that's called a quad. So if you see that on drawings called out as a duplex, that's what that means. If it's called out as a quad, that means there's not just two, but there's four of these. And the symbol for these duplexes is the 2 lines with a circle, and symbol for a quad is the 4 lines in a circle. Looks like we got our phone line here. And here's an interesting one. This one on the plate says DD, which I can only assume is dedicated. A lot of times when you have a dedicated line, the outlet itself will be orange. Dedicated means that this line goes to the panel and has its own circuit breaker. So on these regular outlets, these regular duplexes, they'll be tied together. So these two will probably be tied together on the same breaker, but with a dedicated that has its own line. That's important for big machines. Like I think this place before was a newspaper, so they probably had a copy machine that had a lot of requirements. So they needed a dedicated line. Let's just check here. It says right here, dedicated left wall stair. So that's what that one is. That means that this number 4A, 4A is for that switch. All right, what other kind of lines do we have? Oh, while we're in the kitchen, let's look at this other one. GFCI, like I mentioned out there, these are for the ground fault interrupt, sometimes GFCI, ground fault circuit interrupt. And what this means is that any time there's a wet area or an exterior where it could get wet, it has, I guess you can explain it like a breaker inside the outlet. So if it gets wet, it shuts the power off to the circuit itself rather than having to get back to the breaker. When you get into your new space, the first thing you should do is probably check these. Hit the test button. If that pops out, then you're good. Push the reset to put it back live. Same thing here. So that's pretty much it. There's some more complex systems. You might have a 220 volt for a washing machine or for a dryer. You might have some kitchen equipment. You might have some ceiling fixtures or wall fixtures for TVs. But for the most part, those are your standard kind of outlets. You know, if you have an office building, these are usually pretty good. That's all you need. But if you have a lot of equipment, you might need a dedicated circuit. If you have a lot of equipment in one area, you might want to put a quad in. Those are just some things to look out for when you're looking at your office building and trying to figure out if it'll work for your needs. So that's the basics on the electric.